everyone, I'm coming on here today because it is Armistice Day and it very much reminded me about the suffering our mum and dad experienced when they returned from the war. Some of you may have seen the photographs I posted of our mum and our dad. Our dad was in the Cameronian Highlanders during World War II and our mum was in the ATS, and both of them actually did fight on the front line, and that was really unusual for women, you know, because mostly women didn't, but when things got really tough they actually called the ATS into Belgium, and my mum was actually loading the guns to be fired on the front line. My dad, on the other hand, now I'm not sure if they met by this stage, because they met and fell in love during World War II, and neither of them are alive now, so I'm not exactly sure when they did meet. It obviously was during the war. Our dad was an infantryman in the Cameronian Highlanders. He was sent to Burma, where he was shot and where he became a Japanese prisoner of war. Now, as children, although our mum used to talk about the war a lot to us, she actually enjoyed parts of the war. She said she loved the American soldiers and the dances and the fun that they had, and she would always chat about it while she was cooking our Sunday lunch. We would sit around the kitchen table and our mum would tell us the stories about World War II, about the gas masks and about what she did. Now, on the other hand, my dad never ever spoke of the war. When it was Remembrance Sunday as we know it, he would have none of it. He showed no interest at all. And of course it was only once he died and we had access to his soldier's passbook, for me that was the time we discovered that he had actually been a Japanese prisoner of war and he'd been shot in Burma. And obviously I now recognise that that must have been so traumatic for him that he really didn't want to talk about it. And in actual fact, my mother-in-law, Violet Watson, she was exactly the same. She'd been in the fire brigade during the war and she would have none of it. She didn't want to talk about it. So it just goes to show you how different people, different experiences, different perspectives on a situation. And I think what I wanted to talk about today is just to say that we have no idea, have we, what those people, they were young men and young women, there they are amongst guns, bullets, bombs, away from home, strange country sometimes, people they don't know. And being experienced, I mean, for my dad, what on earth must it have been like to be a Japanese prisoner of war? We hear the most horrendous stories, and although he never told us or spoke of it, we kind of knew, because as children we would see our dad sitting in the chair mumbling like this. He'd be speaking to himself and he would be staring into space, just speaking to himself, and he couldn't bear our noise. You know, as children we were not allowed to move. We had to sit still, we had to do as we were told. And to be honest, my dad obviously was persecuted during his time as a Japanese prisoner of war. And then, because there was no help for these people, our mum and our dad did need help, you know. Our mum went on to have 3 children in 3 years. She had a nervous breakdown. My dad's nerves were literally shot to pieces. The slightest noise, he would just he couldn't cope with it. And he certainly couldn't cope with 3 young children running around the house screaming. We had to walk about like mice. And that was the environment we were brought up in. We became like little prisoners, like little tin soldiers. And for me, I believe that the trauma that my mum and dad went through really affected us as children. I think my brothers and sister would all agree that that was the case. Thank God that nowadays these soldiers who come back from fighting do get help. Post-traumatic stress disorder does get recognised and they get help. Whereas in my mum and dad's day, they would just be told to get on with it. And they knew no different. They just, certainly for my dad, would keep that inside of them. And as it happened, both my mum and dad died very young. My mum was 49, my dad was 56. So young, to have died so young. And personally, from the work that I now do, because I am a practitioner and work with people who have things like post-traumatic stress disorder, excuse me, those kind of conditions. I recognise that stress, emotional stress, unresolved emotional stress causes our immune system to become downregulated, our gene expression to be downregulated, and eventually lead to disease. So whilst I am speaking about my mum and dad and their unresolved emotional issues, this goes for absolutely anybody who has unresolved emotional issues. When they are left unattended, they affect your immune system, you get sicker quicker. They affect your gene expression, once again affecting your health and well-being. Affecting your immune system and your genes in a negative way. So if you have had past traumas, past experiences that have left you with unresolved emotional issues, make sure to find somebody to help you to get those resolved, because I'm unsure as to whether people realise that when these issues are unresolved, particularly if they're suppressed, they do lead to illness. And for me, I hope that by sharing these stories with you, that it helps you to look at your issues, your suppressed emotional issues or unresolved emotional issues in a different way. Make them really important, because if you want to live a long, healthy, full life, deal with those issues as close to when they arise as you can. If you want to comment here about any of the things I've talked about, or you want to contact me via my Facebook, please send me a message. You can contact me on brenda@brendacameron.co.uk, or you can contact me via Instagram, brendacameron7582. Let me know if you found what I've said useful, if it resonates with you, and I'll definitely comment or get back to you on any of your comments. Bye bye for now.